Hello, I'm David Hunt, and welcome to Bent TV. My guest today, he even talks more than me. He's even more excitable than me, but he has so many wonderful ideas, and that excitement I just love about him. I met him probably maybe 10 years ago, but he's had an extraordinary life before me and has got even a better life happening for himself as we speak. I can't wait to hear about his coming out stories. I reckon they're going to be an absolute hoot. He got interested in film, but then realised there was no future in that. Travelled the world, ended up with working for one of our very famous airlines here. He hasn't stopped there. As I said, he's always got an idea. There's always something going on. And cruising? No, it's not that sort of cruising. It is cruising as in a boat. So obviously he hasn't been doing much of that, but a fascinating story there as well. James Hardy, hello.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not sure who's going to be interested in me, but I'm actually thrilled to be joining you tonight.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure to have you on because you really do put a smile on my face every time I see you. You as a kid, like you're growing up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Melbourne, in Chadstone, back when it was an open air shopping centre, not that massive mega complex we've got now. And life was very simple back then. And I'm old school. I guess similar to you, David, back when I was growing up, there weren't gays around. I mean, it was never talked about in my family. I didn't know any gay people. There were no gay role models on TV. There was nothing gay in the community. And basically, I thought when I had started thinking about, those gay feelings and stuff like that, I thought I was by myself. I thought I was the only person in the world who felt like that. And then, going through teenage years and stuff like that, we were so isolated.
I'm going to pull you up there. So when did you think that you might have been gay? Like what moment in time was it? Was it much younger and then you swept it under the carpet?
It might have been I went to an all boys school, and it might have been when we were at a rowing camp, and it might have been when my hand went down a sleeping bag of someone next to me, and he did as well. So maybe it was then, David. That was probably the
Okay.
first time I could sort of think. Oh well, that was the first time physically I thought, oh well, hold on, there's something going on here, which is I don't know about. It's not. What is this?
So here you go. You had a happy childhood and school life. Did you enjoy it?
Very happy. As I said, an all boys school, traditional family, very conservative, not overly conservative parents, but it was just a very, very happy childhood. But again, back then, um, no role models. I didn't know what. There was talk of homosexuality, but that was it.
All right. So you left school and you got interested in film.
I was a bit of a lost soul at school, mainly because I think I had ADHD. I mean, that wasn't even known back then as well. I'm self-diagnosed, and so I needed something to channel all my energies, my passion, into, and that turned out to be drama and media studies and stuff, which I did at school. And then I thought, well, I'll go on to uni and do that. I did that for a couple of years. But then I looked around, I saw the people who were in the industry, they could work, really well for 6 months, get enormous salary, but they might not work for another year or two. And I thought, well, I want to have a house, I want to have kids probably. And then I went traveling, I went backpacking, and that's how sort of my life changed from that trip overseas.
So at that stage, you were thinking that you were going to marry a woman and settle down and have kids, like after you did that travel? Is that what you were thinking?
Back then, there were no options. It was either be married with kids, which is what society expected, and be happy, or just there was no other sort of other option. I guess you could live by yourself, but back then, even if I was gay, I thought, well, I can't live as a gay person. I can't express those feelings in the community. I can't be in a loving relationship with anyone. So there were very, very few options back then.
But what about, like you're traveling, I'm guessing Europe, as most Australians do. Didn't you come out then? Like, was that your opportunity, or you were still very much in the closet in Europe, of all places?
Some of my close friends knew, but then again, my parents didn't. My parents were very, very important to me. As I said, a traditional family, we were very close. And I thought, well, until I meet someone, there's no reason to tell them. And that's why I actually didn't tell them. I didn't tell them until I was 28, 29, I don't think. Because I was running around, I was going off to all those crazy bars. There was a mandate in St Kilda where they had a little peephole and they used to look out and, okay, you can come in, you look gay. And then, back then we all looked like the village people. So if you looked at someone, they looked like the village people, they were gay. And if they didn't look like the village people, they weren't. So it's so confusing for someone like me now with all these different, they're not stereotypes. There's the femmes and there's the butcher. Like, it's fantastic. But back then it was very black and white. Who looked gay and who wasn't. And if you were in the closet, you tried not to look like the village people.
All right, so you travelled and got the travel bug, and then all of a sudden you took a bit of a U-turn, and what, you got a job with one of the airlines?
One of my friends who was a flight attendant back then, he was one of the happiest people I knew. And I looked at why he was so happy. And he was cabin crew, and he had this incredible life traveling around the world, very well paid. And his friends were all like me. They were sort of Dorothy's friends. I guess they lived this Wizard of Oz existence, traveling all around the world and having these outrageous parties and things like that. And I thought, I want to do that and I can get paid. So much as I love film and TV, I thought, well, hold on, I love travel almost as much. Let's follow that dream. And this guy's made a living. He's got a great lifestyle and he's getting a good income. So let's do that. But it actually took me 6 years to get in. Like, I had to fight tooth and nail. I applied every single year to get into every airline in Australia, and they kept knocking me back. And I made it a commitment. I said, okay, I'm going to get in. And basically, I sat myself down once a week. And I thought, what can I do this week to get me closer to getting into the airline? It took me 6 years, but I'm glad I did because it changed my life.
Wow, and good on you for being that determined to get in. And you said it changed your life, and you're still in that role, in a very senior role, I might say. Do you still enjoy the buzz?
Absolutely. I think if you speak to anyone, all of my colleagues and most of my colleagues, once you get into aviation, I can remember when I started my training course back in, I've been there 33 years now. The trainer said, look, have a look around the room, and the people we see here at the moment, they may change companies, but in 30, 40 years, they'll still be in this industry. And it does get into your blood. And we talk about the smell of avgas in the morning at 4 o'clock at Tullamarine, driving out to the airport. And there's no industry like it in the world. And it's infectious. It's just exciting. So even when sometimes we all have days when we don't want to be at work, but to be on these incredible, incredible machines and to be flying at 40,000 feet across the world, it's insane. And even though I've been doing it for over 30 years and I know pilots, anyone connected with aviation, we look at these aircraft and we don't know how they take off. We don't know how they stay in the air, but we're glad they do. But it's just such an exciting, magical industry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's brilliant that you're still feeling that way. All right. So when did it happen? When did you come out? When was the big moment? Was there one particular man that you matched up with?
And that relates back to my flying career. I'd only been flying probably a year or two, and I flew across the date line. I had 2 New Years. I had a New Year in Melbourne, and then we flew across the date line. I had a second New Year because I ended up in Hawaii at Hula's. For those people who know Hawaii, it's actually the old Hula's, which are very, very famous. The new one is in a corporate hotel down the bottom. The original Hula's was under this enormous banyan tree, and all the old movie stars like Marilyn Monroe and all those famous movie stars used to go to Hula's under the banyan tree with all these fairy lights. And that's when I met Jack, and Jack's this dark-haired, blue-eyed, all-American boy.
How many years ago was that, and how long have you been together?
Probably 27, I guess. 27 now.
Whoa.
And so that was the reason, going back to your question, that was the reason I decided to come out, because I met Jack and I had a reason to tell my parents. And Jack was finally someone I wanted to share my life with. I had to tell my parents. And so that was a very big step back then. But until I'd met someone who's going to be my soulmate, someone I knew who I would be with forever, I thought there's no reason to tell my parents. And so I didn't meet Jack until I was about 28. And I told my parents not long after that, probably about 6 months after that.
How did they react, James? Were they okay?
So I was worried because we used to watch back then, not long before that, Mardi Gras had just started, and so Mardi Gras would be on the TV. And I can remember Mum and Dad. Mum was not a highly Christian woman, but she used to go to church um, infrequently. But Mardi Gras was on the screen and on TV, and they go, "Aren't those people sick?" And they're almost to the point they should be shot. And isn't that disgusting? And so I'm sitting
Whoa,
on the
whoa.
sofa watching this with them, and that was part of the reason I thought I could never tell them. And then I met Jack, and I thought, well, obviously I have to tell them, and Jack's the most important thing in my life, and we're just going to have to deal with it. One of the most, any gay person can relate to telling your parents for the first time. So I told them, and with that, instantly, well, mum and dad both said, well, if you love Jack, he is part of our family, and he was a part of our family from day one going forward. And my dad died not long after that. And at the funeral, Mum was in the Country Women's Association, and all these people. She wanted to tell everyone that Jack was my partner. I said, Mum, this is about Dad remembering his memory. And she said, no, he's a part of our family. So Mum went up to every single person at Dad's funeral, dragged Jack along and said, this is James's partner, Jack. And
Wow.
so we laughed about it at the end of the wake because I said to Mum, I think they think we're in business together, Mum. I don't think they think we're a couple. They don't know about gay men and homosexuality. And it wasn't even in their scope of thinking. But Mum was fantastic. It surprised me.
So Jack moved out here to Australia with you. Like he was obviously American, as you said, and you met him in Hawaii. So he just said, "Okay, I'll come to Australia."
It took about a year or two for him to make that decision. I would never have
Sure.
asked him. And having a long distance relationship, even working for a big airline, so many people said, it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And in the end, he said he'd come out. And 27 years later, here we are. So he's come out. He worked for an airline for a little while, Northwest up there, and he's since moved out to Australia. And we got married just this year.
Oh, congratulations! I didn't realise that. Now, like you must drive him crazy. As a matter of fact, when I
I
saw
do.
you a week ago, that you actually said to me, he said to you that morning, James, just stop talking. You talk too much. So is it that sort of relationship where he can tell you to, shut up and stop talking?
Well, to a point, a lot of the time he doesn't. He doesn't actually. Well, I'll talk, and I've actually picked up recently that he'll just repeat the last two words I've said, and I think he's been listening, and that I'm happy. I just talk. So we're very, very different. He's very quiet. He's very zen. He's intelligent. I'm everything he's not. He's neat and tight, like complete. But that's why we work. There's that yin and yang, and I'm hard work. But with the hard work, there's some. It's what's a roller coaster, but it's a fun roller coaster. Life is much more interesting having those peaks and troughs rather than just going straight ahead.
Absolutely. But you're actually very good, financially. Like I know of a couple of places. You've got a place up Dalesford Way. There's one over in Paran. You've probably got 100 other properties as well. So like you just haven't cruised along. You've really plotted and planned your life, haven't you, with what you're doing?
I guess we have a lot of these things have happened, but it's more, I guess, I need a project. I've got to have something to put my teeth into, and that's how I got into renovating. And then I got onto Google SketchUp, and I designed a house, and we built that house. And then we wanted a house in the country, so I bought a house on eBay for $15,000 and moved that to Dalesford and put that back together. I had an inflatable movie screen. So provided I've got a project, so for someone like me, I need to channel all that energy into something. Whereas Jack, he's happy to watch and come along for the ride. And I spoke to a mate of mine. He's got a young kid who was not dissimilar to me at my young age. Who was, I think he's got ADHD, whatever the terms are now, and he was very lost and stuff. And my advice to my mate was get him to find a passion to channel yourself into, And that if you follow your passion, it's not like work. And that's how we've ended up being, we're very comfortable. And that's not through
Yep.
any big game plan. It's through finding a passion project. It's like you with the art hunter, David, with and joy. When you find something you're passionate about, you tend to excel at it. And if you excel at it, the financial rewards almost invariably follow. And it's the people who don't follow your passion, they're the ones I think that get lost. So if anyone comes to me and says, James, I'm a bit lost, I don't know what I'm doing in life, I say, what's your passion? If you don't know, find out. And as soon as you find out, do everything in your life to follow that passion. And that's what flying was for me.
Right. But also, well, apart from the flying side of it, you're a real entrepreneur. You're like, you really are. You're like the fact that, like you transported a house to up Dalesford Way and then you've decorated it and you Airbnb it and you're like, and your place over in Paran, you Airbnb and you're like, just everything you do, you're very entrepreneurial, aren't you?
Well, yes, but again, that comes back to the passion. I don't think I set out to be entrepreneurial. I don't set out to do a big project. I just need something to focus all my energies. And if you find something you can put that passion into, like whether it's renovating a house or doing art or whether it's my flying career or the cruises I've moved into, I'm so passionate about that it's not really thinking I want to start another business, which I've done a number of times. That's the last thought in my mind. It's more I want to do this because this is exciting and fun, and it just I end up with another business. So
I was going to move on to cruising. You mentioned it. All of a sudden, you're part of this worldwide network where it's all this top end cruising, which is obviously not happening right now. But you got involved in it before the pandemic. And why? How? Like where did all that come from?
well, again, it goes back to I love cruising. I love flying. I love seeing the world, and I've been fortunate. I used to go around the world twice a month with the airline. I was in London, and so it comes from that love of travel. And as part of that, I'd stumbled into cruising about 10 or 15 years ago before all these new ships came along. And because I worked for a big airline, I thought, well, I think I could probably sell a few cruises to my mates flying. And so, again, I didn't start out to set up a big business. I stumbled into that. And because I'm so passionate about these cruises, I say, this is fantastic. And look at this. I show people's photos and they ended up booking cruises and stuff. So that's become a very big business where we've got about 10 staff now. And as part of that, I've
Wow.
stumbled into hosting cruises, high-end cruises. And
Okay.
that's the ultimate.
Uh, Incredible. So it must be, like sort of really killing you right this very moment with the world not cruising. Like how do you hold yourself down in a situation like this where you want to be out there, you want to be, like talking to people about book a trip, you'll love the cruise, or hosting cruises. Like it must be difficult for you right this very moment.
It's frustrating. However, again, if I didn't have a project I was working on, and so I was a little bit lost during the lockdown. However, I've got this new project which is doing an international radio show where we're talking to cabin crew and people working on ships from all over the world. And I've got a team of probably about 20 working on it at the moment. And it's going to be a show where people call in from London or Korea or Auckland or Berlin or Africa. And we talk about the best places in Hong Kong to get a massage or to get a cheap suit. Or if we're in Africa, the best safari, because as cabin crew and people who work on these ships, we know the world probably better than most other people. And so we're guaranteed if we end up in a city, most of the cabin crew will gravitate to this little street down a back alley to this one restaurant that's got the best fish soup, whatever it is. And that's simply because that's what we do. We're in these amazing cities every week of our working career. And so what I'm doing, this show is bringing together all these cabin crew from all these different airlines in the world. And we're going to share all those tips and places that we've discovered over the years with everyone who doesn't fly, to share it amongst all of us as colleagues, but also to people who've never flown before, and say, hey, if you're going to San Fran, don't do all that tourist stuff. go down the laneway, turn left, go up 2 flights of stairs, and there's this incredible whatever it is.
And you explained it to me that you actually said, think of Eurovision and hello, Belgium. And, like Belgium comes in and then they talk about what's going on in Belgium. Is that how you're treating it? Is that right?
That's how we're linking all the segments, because we are crossing from London to LA to San Diego to New Zealand to Alaska to Korea. And so what the theme music we're putting in between is Eurovision, and I'm connecting with Crew Radio, which is mainly BA Crew, British Airways up in London. And so they're doing a whole lot of the connecting stings to say, hello, Germany, hello, Berlin, can you hear us? So it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to have shopping tips and massage and cabin crew. When we get together, they're all like me. They're all the loudest people in the room. So you can imagine getting 12 of us on the radio all at once. It's going to be insane, but it's going to be fun.
So how are you going to get people to find out about it? Like it's all very well for all the cabin crew people to talk about it amongst themselves, which is a lot of people. But you obviously want, like people like me to know where to go if I go to Amsterdam.
Absolutely. Well, Crew Radio have been set up. They were a couple of cabin crew, I guess, very similar to me, and they set that up about a year ago. And they're finding that they've got a listening audience all over the world, because obviously with all this technology we're dealing with at the moment, that people can listen in Korea, and apparently they've got an enormous number of Filipinos and Koreans. So anytime they play a K-pop song, their listening numbers go through the roof. So I thought I might just play K-pop. That's the only music I'm going to play on my show. And really, cabin crew are probably the best promoters. We have, in a normal day, we might have a couple of thousand people we're dealing with on the aircraft if we're doing a couple of legs. And we just talk. You can't shut us up, as my partner knows. And so word of mouth is probably the best way of letting people know we're doing these projects. But I think it's going to take off, because a lot of the business owners, like if we're talking about someone who's got this amazing fish head soup in Hong Kong, the word spreads very quickly. Hey, you should listen to this show. All these flight attendants came in here and they're doing this show. So I think we're going to have that two-way, from flight attendants to the general public, and then hopefully they're going to find us in other ways as well. Who knows? No one might listen, Dave. It might just be me and a couple of cabin crew talking and laughing to each other. But at the same time, I don't care, because I'm not doing it to get lots of listeners and things. I'm doing it because it's fun. It's a passion.
And what's it called, James?
We're calling it with names we're moving around with at the moment. I think it's slips, holiday trips and slips. And it's complicated, because for my airline, I call an overnight a slip, whereas in the UK, they call it an upline or a downline. And in America, they're calling it an overnight. So the terminology we're having trouble with is basically holiday slips and tips, something like that. I'll come back to you on that. It's interesting, because it's such an international show, we've had to pull it back to, I didn't realise until we started doing the show that cabin crew in different parts of the world are calling an overnight a different thing. And that's the sort of thing we're going to have fun with.
It just sounds like as you said, you've got to have a project. There's always something. And right this very moment, you're being stood down from your job because there's no flight. So it's just wonderful that you've given yourself this opportunity to create something else on the side.
And in fact, without going into this last lockdown, I wouldn't have done this project. And there's a friend of mine someone I work with, and we've been talking for a long time about doing a podcast, and we were going to do it on murder. There's so many podcasts out there at the moment. And this last lockdown came along, and I said to Catherine, let's just do it. I know about cruises. You know nothing about cruising. Let's just do this podcast. So that's how the cruise podcast happened. And then the cruise podcast has led into this crew radio thing, which is different again. So the lockdowns, I could have been going insane, but I've actually used it to create another crazy thing, which is going to chew up a lot of my time.
And also, James, as I mentioned, you've got a place in Paran and one in Dalesford Way, but you're living on the Yarra in one of the huge high-rise apartments, which is a brand new building. It's very new right now. What's the idea about living in the heart of the city?
We love high rise living. In some ways, we used to live on level 47 across the river at Freshwater Place, and that was like looking out of the aircraft window for the sunrise and the sunset. And there's something about being in a big city. I guess with my flying career, I've spent a lot of my life in the big cities, London and Paris and New York, and I'm attracted to the buzz of the city, the ambulances at night, the cleaning at 3 in the morning and stuff. So that's why we live in the city of Melbourne. And Melbourne's one up there with it holds its own with any city in the world. And we just love this style of living. To be able to go downstairs and get a coffee, and then you walk down a laneway, and you find, this great place with fish head soup and stuff. Exactly like I was talking about on our show. We're trying to share those secrets of Hong Kong, Singapore, and New York, etc. We live that sort of life here. We wander down laneways, and there's all the festivals, as you know, and the art and things. So Melbourne's a pretty special city, and to be living here is fantastic. I just can't wait until it opens up.
Yeah, well, it's happening as we speak. James Hardy, an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And there's so much more that we could talk about, but never stop, and you won't. You won't stop with your excitement and enthusiasm and your creative mind. Like coming up with these ideas and podcasts and travel podcasts, where to go, what to do, and finding out from people like yourselves is the perfect way. So thank you for chatting with us today.
Oh, well, thank you, Dave. It's been a pleasure. It really has. Thank you.
I'm David Hunt. You have been watching Bent TV, and we'll see you again real soon. See ya.